Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders in crypto and blockchain all around the world. And today I have another amazing guest. She is the co-founder and CEO of the Soon Network. Her name is Joanna Zeng. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jamil, for having me. Excited to share, any insights on the topics.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. And let's kick things off. I kick things off with the easiest question. Maybe the second easiest, but what is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Yeah, the second part, I have to take a second to think about it. But yeah, it's definitely a winding road for me. So my background is previously to prior to crypto, I was working in on Wall Street in currency trading for a decade. So I actually had a career prior to crypto, and I was actually first um, introduced to crypto in 2012, 2013, so quite early as a career threat, right? So I was trading currency, foreign exchange, especially emerging market currencies. And one of my economists on the trading floor just mentioned that, oh, this new, cryptocurrency might be replacing fiat. So that was my instinct as a trader, right? You hedge your career risk with your investment, personal investment in Bitcoin. At the time, that was the only currency, cryptocurrency. So I sadly put all the money into Mongol, the one crypto exchange that got hacked and basically got robbed. So yeah, so that was my kind of like beginning of the end. At the time, I just didn't really give another think until time passed, move forward to 2017. That's when I started looking at the crypto as more than just an investment vehicle, and more as a technical vehicle, right? So that's when Ethereum really got into this programmable, smart contract capability, and extending the crypto use case from just a P2P, peer-to-peer payment network into more of a basically a programmable like network that can do, you can do anything on top of. So that was really interesting theory, and then I quickly realized my background did not, you know, equip me well to talk about like the white paper that was released at the time. So I took a coding lesson, learned about Solidity, and then I basically helped founded the first crypto community here in New York, and called Crypto NYC. We actually got that OG name, and it was really, kind of beginning of the end, right? Everyone just talking about this, the entrepreneurship, journey that they started, and that got me really into my first full-time job with crypto. That was at the Coinbase, first on the leasing team on the institutional side. Basically, still kind of talking to my old clients, but talking about this, basically using crypto as a new asset class. And then later on, basically talking specifically to protocols that are looking to get listed on Coinbase. So then that fast forward, I I was part of this like massive Coinbase layoff in 2020. I'm trying to remember the exact year, um, when the last bear market hit. Um, as I was part of this like NFT marketplace launch that was deprioritized by the company and by the industry. So ever since then, I was actually in infra building stage, right? So first worked at Optimism as a BD lead, actually working on the other side of Coinbase, and brought them in as the first client of OP Stack, building their own base chain. And then later on moved to another protocol called Alio, so TK at one chain. So yeah, basically took two projects to TGE time, and all of this time still thinking, there's something missing, right, in the space, that we need the right infra project that can bring like mass adoption, or user adoption. So I had the idea back in East Denver last year. I'm trying to remember, so that's more than a year ago. And then that, even at the time, it was very clear that Solana was the one place that you have a lot of these new narratives popping out, and it's onboarding new retail cloud, right? Like a lot of new generation. Like I'm talking to all these Gen Zers in New York here that got onboarded to crypto last season through the memes, through Solana, right? So I think the main thing that I realize is it's really important to have the right builder culture, and to have the right tech, right, to differentiated tech to facilitate that. So every builder can, build like the 99% of the use case out there that's not being bottlenecked by the text itself, and then really focus on delivering the best user experience at the end of the day, right? So yeah, that's the short end of it, like why we decided to do soon stack, right? That's basically bring the top performance and the builder culture of Solana to every ecosystem, starting from Ethereum.
Awesome. So really, really, so it's perfectly sounds perfectly logical to me. You
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, logical in the sense that if you're taking some calculated risk, right, and doesn't mind taking some pay cuts on the way.
Right. I took pay cuts, so then I absorbed some hacks. Now we're pay cut. I consider that pay cuts too. So soon network, right?
Yeah.
What's it all about? And what's your vision, your mission? Where do you want to be? Where are you at now? What do you see your role is in the crypto ecosystem?
hmm Yeah, for sure. I was kind of teasing that out. The vision is really, we wanted to make Solana virtual machine, right? Solana, the execution environment, as the gold standard that gets expanded beyond the existing Solana chain, right? So why are we doing that? Because there is a existing user base that lives on, let's just use Ethereum as an example, because that's just the one ecosystem that needs most saving. Let's face it. I think it's a good day to say that when, yeah, ETH is trading at the way it is right now. Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is, like, when you look at all the different ETH2s out there, they're really not that different, right? At the end of the day, like, they're actually cultivating this grand farmer culture, and yeah, just like the builders are just the same builders that hop it from one ecosystem to another, and that's why when you look at the Solana virtual machine, right, it's what it enables is, currently we are doing the most real time, live blockchain, right? That's available along all the existing L2s out there. We're a Ethereum L2, right? So we settles onto Ethereum. We combining the best of the two worlds, using Solana's virtual machine or execution environment, and settles onto the Ethereum's safety standard, right? So the security standard that's using Ethereum as the L1 to settle on top of. So because what we're doing is bringing all the 50 milliseconds block time, the high performance metrics, 30K TPS, actually about to be increased to 80K TPS because our Fire Dancer integration. All of that is bringing new use cases into Ethereum, into other ecosystem, and then we're starting to see these, really interesting, unique, right, user features that you just previously couldn't see on the EVM land. Using example, right? So I was very much of an ETH maxi. As you can see from my background, I was Coinbase, I was Optimism, and then I started exploring these, DEX aggregators on Solana, like Jupiter is example, right? They have DCA value average, like all these like batch transaction processing capability that just really rivals, or beat the rest of the DEX aggregators out there. So to me, like it's again really more about bringing the best user experience to every user, right? So it doesn't matter if you're like in the Ethereum ecosystem, or actually in our case, we also are selling on top of BNB. So that's another ecosystem that we were able to extend Solana to, right? It doesn't matter which ecosystem you're in, but you get that best user experience. And then from the from the developer perspective, it also makes sense because they just develop once and then they deploy everywhere, right? So this multi-settlement approach allows the Solana builders or people that previously wanted to build on Solana, so they're using Rust language to build their smart contract. Now they can deploy on, you can still deploy on Solana, but also onto Ethereum to get liquidity access, as well as the big user base that I think, again, just to come back to like why starting with Ethereum is because there's so much idle assets that's sitting on ETH, right? Like the last 6 months or so, I mean, the biggest sort of narrative on ETH is the restaking, right? Narrative, and people just been parking their assets there, and that's not really capital efficient. So by bringing these high frequency, high trading, almost like micro transactions in a sense, it's bringing all these assets more liquidity, right? Letting it really flow within the ecosystem, and that truly creates value for the user.
Awesome. So I'm looking back at consensus last year, which was around this time, was May.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's bullish on Ethereum. You know, and you just said, and something's happened over the past year, and you
Yeah.
said it, Ethereum needs saving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a couple of myths out there I want to explore. First is, why does Ethereum need saving and at a crossroads? And then second, you mentioned memes. Why have Solana's only or best successes been just for memes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely myth on both sides. I mean, I think the first one is going back to like what the infra enables, right? So essentially, um, the Ethereum, the roadmap has been very heavily focused on the ETH2 side, and then you have like just on the OP stack alone, you have 200. Like literally, I just looking at this, it's like 200, about 200 ETH2s out there, right? Without much differentiator, I don't think any person can like tell you even like the top 10 of them, right? So the point is like for Ethereum users, right? Um, the the experience fragmented, the liquidity is fragmented, the overall um, the overall like the builder culture is also fragmented, right? So what this really is um, essentially bringing back to the user adoption is like, it just further exacerbate the idea of like, Ethereum is for boomer, to be quite honest, right? Like it's very much for this OG money who park their assets, like as I was saying, right, this rate taking protocols, or perhaps like people who got into crypto in 2020, 2019, right? Like in the last cycle through the NFT craze. And then that, never really got liquidated, right? So it's all kinds of like these inactive assets. So so that's what we were trying to bring, this new execution environment into Ethereum, so the users can finally make some use out of those assets, right? Can actually start like trading, perhaps like meme is only one example, it's maybe not the best example, but AI agent, right? Like all these new narratives, prediction markets, right? All the new narratives that got first introduced by Solana, right? Because it's enabling people to trade in such a high frequency that were just previously not available on the EVM stack, right? So I think that's what's really powerful about bringing these very differentiated tech stack into Ethereum, and it's actually saving Ethereum from the lack of user adoption. And then you can look at this like from a user activity perspective, right? Like there's so much more user activity currently happening on Solana versus like on the ETH L2s, all the ETH L2s plus Ethereum mainnet. So yeah, so it's going back to, you know, people are voting with their own transaction. But at the same time, you know that there's still a lot of Solana builders that can benefit from getting access to this huge user base that are kind of like just idle, right? Sitting on their hands and not being able to do anything. There's actually a good report on the Electric Capital report last year that talk about the Rust builders, right? There's the fastest growth happening on the Solana side because the Rust builders, they were able to get onboarded from the Web2 world. And I think the most bullish part is like it's still really just scratching the surface when you look at the percentage of Rust builders that's currently building in Web3 versus, you know, in out there, right? Like outside this bubble. So so I think, yeah, it's like essentially when we look at all the different virtual machines, we looked at actually Solana, and then, you know, Move, Fuel, a few others, next gen VMs, and it's just become really clear that SVM is going to be what's going to save Ethereum from this current kind of lag, right? Because the high performance itself, but more importantly is the maturity of the ecosystem, right? All the other ones I mentioned, you know, they're only been around for like 2 years or less, you know, just by like number of years, but also number of like developers in the ecosystem, the developer tooling, right? Like the entire experience, like how many people are building on top of that is evidence why SVM is the end game. Yeah, so that's answers the first question. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I wanted to cover the grounds. And then the second one on the meme side, I mean, Solana, it's interesting, right? Because it's trying to tackle things very differently from, you know, Ethereum, in a sense that it's very practical, right? It's looking at only like things that have product market fit, or in other words, that has a lot of users, right? Like, let's go back to the user adoption, right? They're very commercial driven. I mean, all the um, we have a lot of Solana builders or Solana OGs on our backers list, right? Like Anatoly, founder, Lily, from the president of the foundation, and actually many others on the, you know, super team. That's their decentralized what do you call it, like community um, yeah, efforts, and many other builders within the Solana ecosystem. So when we talk to them, it's very clear that they're very commercially driven, right? And then they look at like the two sides of the barbell. So on one end, you have these speculative, you know, PMF cases like memes, right? Like yeah, basically almost like a gambling type of activities on blockchain that is PMF, right? And then the other side, you have these like boring stuff like RWA, like stable coins, right? That's also PMF, right? It's starting to pick up the institutional adoption. So I think they're really smart in just only focusing on those two, as opposed to Ethereum Foundation, right? As a prime example of this, and a few other protocols only focus on like research side, right? So very early on, like non-production ready. Yeah, you know, kind of like a, you know, future generation type of I'm not going to give examples because then you know who I'm talking about, like that kind of endeavors. So yeah, I think that's why like I was also very attracted to the builder culture on the Solana side. It's like all about shipping.
Yeah, I remember when the price came down a couple of few years ago to like $9 or whatever. You know who didn't give up was were the Solana developers. They hung in there. So
Mhm.
that was impressive. What the result of that, you know, I also noticed that there was, you know, I like the fact that you're saying that Solana SVM is the cure to Ethereum, because a lot of other people would say Solana is going to take out Ethereum. There's going to be no more Ethereum. So um,
Right.
I like the approach. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, after everything I talked about Ethereum's not going to go down to zero. We all know that, right? It's going to exist for a very, very long time. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality of it, right? So we have to figure out how we can again bring these like new energy, right, new builders into the Ethereum world, and bring that kind of similar experience or even better experience to the Ethereum users as well.
Yeah. So I'm good with that part. The question that I have is how you enable high speed, which Solana is known for,
Right.
without compromising decentralization, because Solana, from what I understand, is very centralized. So how do you
Yeah.
spark
Yeah.
that balance?
Yeah. Great question. We have been working on this. Essentially, I mean, I guess is Solana very centralized? That can be another debate, maybe for a different episode. But uh, yeah. I think the main thing is, we're using a typical L2 technical design, right? We're using a roll up sequencer model, right? So it is at this point a centralized sequencer, right, that we run, but we don't exclude the possibility of share that sequencing with other validators, right, and other chain operators. Just to be clear, right? So think of us as an OP stack for SVM. So we're not just simply building a SVM, single L2, right, general purpose L2. We're also building the tech stack that allows folks to use it and spin up their own chains. So either for application specific purposes or for the second, I think the second use case is even more important, is to bring like the SVM execution environment to a EVM based L1. So the example here is BNB chain, right? So we so far have already successfully delivered within a year's time, less than a year time, two live mainnets. One is the general purpose chain I mentioned. That's like a POC chain, right? Dogfooding our own tech stack. That's called Soon mainnet. It's been live since January. We have 40 applications currently deployed live on that blockchain. About 20 of them, half of them, we know really well because they're Soon specific, and we basically help incubated them. And then on the second mainnet that we launched just recently, about 2 weeks ago, that's a SVML2 settling onto BNB L1, right? So using BNB as the settlement layer and security trust assumption. So that one is really interesting because it mixes up the distribution, the retail distribution of BNB chain, obviously, and also the top performance, coming from the Solana ecosystem. And I think it's even more kind of unique in the sense that it's also bringing this cultural barrier down, right? The East and the West, because not many people use BNB chain in the West, myself included. I didn't use it quite a lot until recently, like because of the SVM BNB is burning BNB as the gas token, instead of like ETH, right? So I had to like actually figure out how to acquire a BNB token, and in the process, using a lot of BNB related ecosystem projects. So I think it's to the BNB people, it was very clear that they're using us as like the Trojan horse to attract these Western talent into building on top of the BNB ecosystem.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of people. I guess because we don't have access to Binance. There used to be Binance US, and now there's not in the US,
Right.
so it makes it a little difficult. But I think I saw. No, it wasn't a BNB. It was Solana. It was a commercial I saw a couple weeks ago. I think it was either Fidelity or T.
Hmm.
Rowe Price or somebody saying
Hmm.
all the wonderful things they're going to offer with Solana products. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering how the regulatory environment now is
Hmm.
accelerating that institutional crypto adoption, including Solana's adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's truly like the one shining beacon of hope, right? That's still keeping us positive in this very gloomy environment. Because I think the issue is like so far, at this point it's still like a lot of PvP, like market dynamics, right? So the issue is like, do we want to play the PvP game with other protocols and kind of attracting like whoever like previously um haunted like the airdrops of, I don't know, like all these abstract, story protocol, like all these chains that TGE'd, yeah, bearer chain, whatever, right? Like all these previous like users of these other chains to come to build on, to come to explore us, or do we want to like really bring new people into the ecosystem, right? I think that's obviously like the obvious answer here, a better scenario. So yeah, so I think what has been working on the Trump administration, let's really break it down, right? It has been giving a lot of very positive signal, right, as far as the regulatory clarity is concerned. So it may not be like everything that we want it to be yet, right? But at the very least, they are committed to at least give us some clarity. I think that's already a huge, huge step forward from the previous administrations. And then secondly, I think all the even more kind of obviously positive signals, like adding like all these Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and the slew of other assets into the crypto, like I think I'm trying to remember exact wording, but basically the crypto reserves, right? That the Trump team, the crypto team, has been preparing, right? That's a very like obviously good news for the overall ecosystem. However, on the other side, right, you have all the macro environment that's very clearly is having a huge turmoil, right, on the market, and that impact is still in my mind like going to sustain for at least a couple months, right, as we start to see like all the other countries are starting to retaliate, right, and start to like basically take actions, and that might change. And I would be the first one to admit that I don't think this is a long term, right? Like the tariff is not going to last forever. I have very high confidence that this is just temporary, and it can be negotiated down. So maybe this will quickly go away or eventually go away, but that certainly has a issue, right, on the current administration's effort on focusing on the crypto side.
I wasn't going to say the magic word tariff, but you did.
It's what's on everyone's mind these days.
It is. It is. I got to tell you, morning of the election, from the morning of the election to like early January, my portfolio 3x'd.
Yeah,
And now it's the same amount or less
round trip,
now.
right? It's the same
Yeah.
as mine.
And I was like, I didn't just round trip again, did I? Yeah, You know,
Yeah.
and, and despite the round trip, and I'm sure the money will come back, as you're saying. Um, Despite that price level things, the growth of tokenized finance
Mhm.
is still growing. It's still like that's been unchanged. So, what do you see as the outlook for the growth of tokenized finance, including possibly Solana ETFs being part of that too?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to echo that. It feels like we're still making a lot of progress from a technical perspective, right? To include, these like, gold asset, right? Or I saw the one team is actually working on bringing like uranium into onto the blockchain as a tokenized asset as well. So, I mean, I still very much are encouraged by these news when I see like the technical improvement are still happening, and then teams are doing all these bringing new assets into the blockchain, right? Like increasing the kind of bringing the off chain yield into on chain, right? And then I think the other positive news is just about, I want to say maybe like a month ago, I saw this news on Coinbase. They're basically tokenizing the stocks itself, right? So as you know, Coinbase, even though they have a base chain, they don't have a token for base chain, right? But they certainly have their own Coinbase stock. So they are tokenizing that Coinbase stock and putting that onto the blockchain as a tokenized assets. And I think that will set a precedent for all the other exchanges that are seeking IPOs. As you may or may not seen like recently that the Kraken IPO is being prepared, and so is Gemini. So I think all of these like huge, IPO assets will like, yeah, basically U.S. stocks are also going to be tokenized, and that's a huge shift, right? That paradigm shift for the industry, because I think a lot of times we were being compared to the stock market, right? Like as a risk asset, we were kind of like either you choose the stock market or choose crypto assets, but now these can actually be interoperable, right? In the sense that yeah, it can create yield on both the tokenized asset as well as the underlying asset. So that's really interesting to me, right? This like structured note kind of a financial instrument, right? Like I came from the Wall Street world, so I've seen like how that is bringing a lot of new innovations to the industry. So I think that is interesting. Like now we're experimenting with all these new things, so that can potentially bring that ETF discussion, up on the agenda, if we start to see a lot more adoption.
Interesting. Interesting. Looking forward to what the future has to bring in the next 1 to 2 years, and then definitely in the future that beyond that. But yeah, so I want to thank you very much for your time today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I have one last question. It's
Yeah.
How can people find out more information about you, about Soon Network? How can they do that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think the best way to look up our information is through our Twitter. So you can go to soon_SVM, and that's the official Twitter. And then also our website is SOOS, so soon, not soon, but SOO.network, right? That's our website. And yeah, I mean, really love the conversation ahead of us as well. So yeah, we'd love to, continue to, yeah, come back and talk to the audience again when we moving forward with our all the product updates.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Gemma.